Your data analytics portfolio might actually be hurting your chances to land a job. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 pros that I think there is to building a portfolio and the 5 cons that I think you are probably not considering and not thinking about. And by the end of this video, you will know whether or not you should actually invest your time and energy into building analytics engineering portfolios for that data role that you've been chasing. Number 1, a pro of creating your portfolio is you get to showcase your skills. If you have dashboarding skills, Python skills, you can demonstrate that, hey, I can use these to create cool visualizations. Take a look. I've done it. I can prove that I've done it. The second benefit to creating these portfolios is that it kind of makes you stand out. And I'll touch about that in a little bit, but it makes you stand out in the sense that a lot of people won't go that extra mile and won't create portfolio projects. And so creating some will make you be in that top 10, 5% of candidates. The third pro there is to creating your analytics portfolio is you are actually building and tracking your personal growth. Oftentimes, people are unaware of how much work they're actually putting in on the side during their free time, but creating a portfolio lets you track, oh, I've actually been diligent about keeping up with what I said I was going to. And that actually, believe it or not, starts to build a very, very healthy habit so that it actually pushes you and reinforces the idea that, hey, I'm disciplined, so I'm going to continue building and continue working on my free time, knowing that it's your decision. Number 4, networking and visibility. In the world of social media, where you can post something on your LinkedIn or some Instagram post or maybe get retweeted by an influencer, building a project that is very, very cool can actually be very, very useful if it goes viral, quote unquote viral. So it is useful to then meet new people, network with hiring managers or people at big tech companies that can give you a referral. And so don't underestimate the fact that building a portfolio or at least a few cool projects has at least the potential for it to go viral. And the 5th pro is enhancing your communication skills. If you can build a portfolio and then somebody that either has no idea what that's about or no idea what tech is about, maybe has no coding skills, if they see your project and are able to say, hey, that's pretty cool, then it means that you were able to actually enhance your communication skills via a project, documentation, code, a presentation, a dashboard, which, believe it or not, is something that engineers are not that good at. They'll do all the dirty work and the code, but they won't actually be able to communicate what they've done. And so that is actually a massive pro because you are working on a skill that is very much needed in the coding community. Now, let me turn over to the negative side. What are 5 cons that I believe exist if you go out and try to create your analytics portfolio? So, number 1, the most obvious one, it could potentially be a huge time and energy sucker. Because the truth is, if you create projects that have no impact on whether or not you get a job, you do have to ask yourself, was this really worth it? If your goal is to get a job and you've been doing portfolio projects for 2 years, you probably over-optimized for portfolio projects and you probably spent a lot more time than was needed in the first place. So the second biggest con, which is kind of related to that first point, is recruiters might not actually look at it. Believe it or not, we've done the studies. If you have a GitHub link in your resume, there's no guarantee that the recruiter is going to click on it. And if you're wondering why, the biggest reason is because recruiters aren't always technical. And so because they're not technical, they're not going to necessarily click on that link, which means if you did 2 years of projects, you might actually have wasted 2 years. Depends on what you are using those projects for. Con number 3, nothing will substitute practical experience. And so notice that the cons are kind of playing on each other, but the reality is if you have 10, 15 years of experience, creating that one extra project on your GitHub portfolio isn't really going to make a massive difference, especially if that project isn't filling in some of your gaps from a skills perspective. If you don't have real-time streaming experience, then maybe you can do a project that has Kafka or Kinesis in order for you to actually put that on your resume. Otherwise, you do have to question why is it that you're actually doing that extra project. Con number 4, analysis by paralysis. Believe it or not, we've seen this over 10,000 times at this point. A person comes in saying, hey, I've been thinking about making this move into the data space. They go online, on Reddit, on YouTube. They look up a ton of projects because they're like, I just want to get experience. I want to learn, blah, blah, blah. More often than not, people end up doing nothing. The reason they end up doing nothing is because they get overwhelmed with so much information. They get a paralysis by analysis, or paralysis by over-analysis, I should say. And then you actually ended up wasting more time thinking rather than doing because you weren't sure if you were going to choose the right project or not, which, by the way, is fair because a lot of people do tend to choose, quote unquote, the wrong project. And point number 5, it will become outdated. Meaning, if you do a project on a very cool tool, let's say blockchain, right? And then 2 years later, that technology is no longer really hot or popping. Let's put blockchain aside because people will have different takes on that. That project might actually lose how much weight it carries in the job market. So that means that if you do go the portfolio route, you probably have to update your portfolio projects a few times every couple of years. Now, with that said, that leads to the main question. Should you do portfolio projects or not? And the reality is there's no right or wrong answer, but I'm going to give you a few tips as to how you can actually determine whether you should go this route. And tip number 1 is figure out what it is you're trying to do, right? I have a friend who loves creating, little gadgets to sell to companies. So he's creating portfolio projects so that he can then turn around and make some money off of it. He doesn't care about the money, but he just wants to sell them to companies so that he can get relationships and contacts at those big tech companies in case he ever wants to work there, or in case he ever wants to partner with them on some business initiative, right? So that's number 1. It's really knowing what it is you are creating these projects for, right? Have a goal in mind. That brings me to the second step, which is have somebody that knows what they're doing check off on the project before you actually do it. And so at Data Engineer Academy, we actually have some free projects that you can click on the link below to go then do entirely for free, because we verified that those projects were done at big tech companies. And so when you're actually going and doing these projects to put them on your resume, you can rest assured that recruiters are going to look at them and be impressed instead of some random link that you might have found online where you have no idea if the tools are outdated or whatever the case is, right? And then the third tip is another way for you to pick up projects is to maybe do some freelance work. Freelance work is a great way for you to earn money while working on projects, potentially learning, and building relationships with whoever you built those projects for. And by the way, that is also considered practical experience, right? It's called fractional work. And that fractional experience or practical experience can go on your resume and can actually make you look better than some random portfolio project. So if you have any other questions, feel free to email chris@dataengineeracademy.com. Otherwise, make sure to click on the link below. It will take you to our site and you can do some projects entirely for free. Cheers.